everybody. Welcome back to another episode of the Skeleton Crew. I'm your host, Jen Callahan, and tonight I have with me Joe Ferreri. He's joining me from Long Island, New York. He is a board-certified radiology practitioner assistant, and he's working with this current company called New York Imaging Specialists. Tonight, we're going to talk about, his role from starting into X-ray all the way through to him being an RA and his transition, working in hospitals and now currently working with the imaging specialist, which is actually an outpatient center. So, Joe, thanks for being with me tonight.
Oh, you're welcome. Thank you for having me, Jen.
Oh, my pleasure. So we're going to have a great conversation, but first let's learn a little bit about you. Talk a little bit before we started recording, but let's share with our audience, where you started and where you are now and how you got there.
So I went to X-ray school back in 95, 96, graduated in 97. I graduated, started working at a local hospital doing, general X-ray, and I had a passion for IR from the time I was a student. Got the opportunity as a student to get hands-on experience and scrub in with some of the interventional doctors in my training program. Absolutely loved it. Was fortunate when I got out of school. I did X-ray for about 2.5 years, and a position. I was actually approached by one of our radiologists and asked me if I had any interest in IR. And I said, yeah, that's where I want to end up. And, I love everything about it. And so they started bringing me in there, kind of per diem covering, shifts and vacations and stuff like that for about 1.5 years. And then they moved me in there full time. So I've been in IR now for 25 years. A lot of changes along the way. Once I got into IR, I decided I wanted to go back to school and obtain my bachelor's degree. So I went to St. Joseph's College here in Patchogue, Long Island, obtained my bachelor's degree. And when I got done with that, just decided that I wanted to take my vascular interventional exam. So I started preparing for that. Took me about 2 years to document all the cases, with all the requirements and stuff, just to sit for the exam. Took my VI exam and got certified. I passed the exam. Then got done after about a year. Still kept feeling like there was something more out there. Started looking into possibly going to PA school. At the time, being married, having small children, a mortgage, just felt that there would be no way that I could do it. And a colleague of mine actually said, hey, have you heard about the RA program through the ASRT? And, I said, no, I don't really know much about it. So kind of looked into it, was intrigued by it, reached out to the director from, at the time, it was University of Medicine and Dentistry, which then became Rutgers. Reached out to the program director there. We had some conversations. I decided to go down that road, but I decided that I was going to get everybody to buy in. So I went to my administrators. I spoke to my interventional radiologist that I work with. And, how do you feel about this? Would you mentor me? He was on board, thought it was great. As an IR tech, we were first assist. So I was scrubbed in on every case, for all the years that I was in there. So he thought it was great. We went to administration. I went to, the vice president of nursing and human resources. And everybody was supportive. And they said, great. There's no promise of a job, but, we'll support the role. So I got the hospital to sign a collaborative affiliation agreement with Rutgers, and I did all my clinical internship at the local hospital. Finished up the program, and once I got done, we approached admin and said, is there any possibility? They looked through everything. Took them about a year, a lot of board meetings, some pushback from different departments on the medical staff. The end result is they were all on board. So after about a year, they approved the position. They created a position. At that time, I had become supervisor of interventional radiology. So I was kind of running everything. And we were in the middle of putting in a brand new angio suite. So I didn't really want to give that up because I was so involved from day one with it. And I had asked, can I stay on as the supervisor in kind of a hybrid role, get us through the construction, which I did. once we got done, my role just became strictly, the RA role. Started doing, procedures, working with our interventionalist. We had brought on 2 other interventionalists at the time. So we were rapidly expanding upon. Again, at the hospital for 25 years. And one day I was just sitting at my desk and kind of just thinking about, where I am after 25 years. And a friend of mine reached out to me that was working for New York Imaging, and asked me if I would be interested. They had started up an interventional program and asked me if I would be interested in getting together and hearing about their program. So, kind of thought about it and said, yeah, you know what, I'm gonna take a look. So I went out and I met the staff, the team, the interventional radiologist that I work with now, Dr. Drapkin. Met everybody. I really was very impressed. And I felt like at the hospital, I kind of did every role along the way, from staff tech to IR tech to supervisor of interventional radiology. I did all the quality control years ago with had to go to all of our state inspections, to the RA, which, was my ultimate goal. So I decided to take this opportunity and get involved with something from the ground up and be a big part of it. And I have to be honest and say I haven't looked back once. It's been a great experience. Loving every day.
Yeah. I mean, so many questions to ask you, just going through, like, the course of your life. I mean, where to start, really? But I mean, honestly, obviously you feel so great about where you currently are. And like you said, like, you've never looked back, because sometimes the journey, like, really is the whole story and makes, like, for the best ending, that you to possibly have just started as an X-ray tech and then possibly just moved right into, like, trying to go back to school for an RA, or not trying, but going back to school to become an RA,
Yeah.
your story would be different, but you did the work. And not even say you have to do the work, or that you have to go through the whole journey that you did, but it fully prepares you. And you know what I mean? Like, every aspect of what you're doing at this point. You started in X-ray, you went back, you did your VI boards, you worked in it, you love it so much, you decided you wanted to transition into the RA, but you already were a supervisor, so you were already so hands-on in the department. So, I mean, it makes sense why you would never look back and possibly even change anything in what your story is,
Yeah. It was, I have 3 children, and I can remember, during the RA, program, doing my work, and my kids were young, and they would ask, Daddy, what, I'd get ready to put them to bed at night. And what are you doing? Why you have your books out? Why are you doing this? It's because this is what I want to do. It's something that I really enjoy,
Mm-hmm.
And, there was a lot of, I want to say, skepticism because of the RA role. And for so many years, the first few years when I started, I know we talked about this on another podcast, how it was, fly under the radar. My last like what I feel like I really wanted to accomplish was when I was leaving the hospital setting. Again, it wasn't for, anything other than a new opportunity. But my last meetings that I had, I was really pushing. We were being taken over by a large, hospital organization. And I really wanted the RA role implanted into that organization. And there was some resistance because I was the only one. And they would come back and say, well, you're the only RA in the entire system of 75,000 employees. So, but that doesn't, that's not a bad thing. I don't look at that as a bad thing, as being the only one. And the end, before I decided to make the transition, they called me in and they said, you should be very proud, because through a lot of background meetings, management and administrative meetings, the RA role is instilled in our system, and any of, the hospitals can hire an RA.
Mm-hmm.
So I was very proud to be a part of that.
Yeah, sure. I mean, you laid the groundwork there for future RAs who could get into that health system. That
Yeah.
bring me back to a question I was thinking. When you did, complete your RA degree, the doctors that you were working with, did you feel any like pushback from them with you coming in and doing procedures? What
No,
you might
no,
possibly be doing?
no. Honestly, they were so supportive. The skills that they helped me build, it made me what I am today. I was fortunate to be part of that. And, we had the hospital was starting a residency program. So we went from a radiology residency program to an IR program. I was actively involved with residents every single day. They worked with me. They rotated with me. We did ports, we did paras, we did thoras. And the experience that I got working with them, as well as the feedback, and now that they're out there graduated, we had, I think, about a year ago was the first IR class that graduated, residency class that graduated, called me up, invited me to the graduation, which was just made me feel good that I was a part of their growing. It feels good to have their support now that they're out there working and they're saying, hey, you know what? I worked with an RA, or I'd get a phone call, from one that graduated, and she would say, hey, Joe, I'm working over here, and I met a girl, and she's an RA, and, I told her so much about you, and it just feels good to be involved in their training,
Yeah.
on the skills that I received, and passing it on and teaching them little things to, help them out.
Sure. I mean, mentorship is huge, at any point or stage in life, and it's great that you received it when you were, going through your RA program and you were able to give it to, other students who came after you, even though they weren't in the same type of program. They were in a residency, but that's great that you were able to pass along the knowledge that you have. So it's awesome. It's like full circle,
Yeah.
So let's talk about then, what differences do you kind of see? I mean, I think of looking at like working in interventional radiology at a hospital and then working in interventional radiology at an outpatient facility. Is it completely different? Like the types of procedures I would assume might have to differ a little bit just because of possibly like severity. Like you're not doing,
Right.
not to say I'm not sure. Are RAs part of like embolizations? Would they be part of that? In a hospital setting?
I mean, you could be as a first assist, working with the doctor.
Okay. But obviously you're not doing something like that in an outpatient.
Correct.
No.
Correct. But we do a lot of embolizations, so, go back to the field of IR. When I started, we were doing, most of our work was all vascular work. The vascular surgeons were referring all of their patients to us. We were doing all of the diagnostic angiograms, runoffs, stenting. We were doing cryoplasty.
What's cryoplasty?
So cryoplasty was popular a few years back, but basically using a balloon and CO2 and basically putting your balloon like you would to do regular plasty across a lesion. And then you would actually hook it up to this setup where you would use CO2 and freeze. And when the balloon expanded, it would freeze the plaque and push the plaque into the wall of the arteries.
Oh.
So, that was being used for a while. And we were the front line for all of the cold legs that were,
Right.
in the emergency room. So, our call was really, a lot of the thrombolysis cases using like angiojet and different types of thrombolytics. But there was a shift in the workflow, probably back in around 2005, 2006. A lot of the vascular practices started hiring interventionally trained vascular surgeons. So they started pulling a lot of those cases back and doing them on their own. So, we evolved. Kyphoplasty was becoming more mainstream. It was a lot, reimbursement was there from the insurance company. So we started doing a lot of kyphoplasties. We worked with several of the big vendors and promoting it and going out to the offices and new influx of patients. And then from there, the field of IR kind of moved into interventional oncology, where we started doing a lot of, Y90 embolization, bland embolizations, TACE, all different kinds of embolizations with our hematology oncology. And that's where I met a lot of the doctors that I'm working with today through this organization, this group. So yeah, there's been a big shift. Jump forward to today, practice. We do a lot of prostate artery embolizations, uterine artery embolizations. We do male and female pelvic congestion and gonadal vein embolizations, as well as all of the other mainstream, PICS, ports, paras, thoras, bone marrow biopsies. So the field itself has changed a lot over the 25 years, that I've been in this area.
Mm-hmm. So question about, doing, lots of outpatient centers, like all over the place, offering, kind of your more like mainstream diagnostic type imaging, MRI, CAT scan, things like that. To be honest, before, you and I were set up to meet with each other and to talk, I mean, I had never heard of IR being part of an outpatient center.
Mm-hmm.
Do you know of other facilities out there that offer similar type services, or are you guys kind of like a standalone practice at this point almost that are unique in offering this?
There are some other outpatient imaging facilities that do some interventional stuff. A lot of it is, port placements. I don't know offhand, area-wise, who else is doing it. Not at the level that we're doing it. New York Imaging, they've taken it. When I joined a year and a half ago, I believe we had 9 imaging facilities throughout Long Island into New York. Since I've joined, I think as of the last couple of weeks, we're up to 17 imaging facilities. We have Brooklyn, Manhattan, Staten Island, Upper, I think Westchester, Hudson Valley, and, multiple throughout Long Island. We are the only office as of this moment in time that is doing interventional procedures, and there's, future expansion of that in the works.
Do you think that you might possibly be a part of like helping develop that? I mean, you don't have to answer that maybe if you don't want to, but I'm just thinking, I mean,
I think so.
I pioneer and part of this, I feel like, someone specifically brought you in and, I would only think that your expertise would be utilized, Yeah.
I hope so. I hope to be a part of it. Once things get going a little bit more, I definitely could see, there being a role, for that.
Mm-hmm. So looking at, working in a hospital setting to working where you currently are now, in terms of like technologies, then to compare to now, have you seen, because, you've been in the field for quite some time, you entered into at least radiology, x-ray in like 95, 96. So, I mean, you've seen a good span of, in terms of just regular x-ray, I'm sure.
Yeah.
But have you seen since you entered into interventional radiology from like the early 2000s to currently now?
Oh, yeah.
Technology that you're working with?
You go to any of the conferences, SIR, any of the big conferences, the machinery, it's like any other technology, every other year, it's like the machine you're using is almost outdated. We use the Philips. Our interventional suite it's a Philips machine with cone beam CT. One of the things that I could right off the top of my head is, I remember starting when we got our first updated, state-of-the-art machine when I was working in a hospital, where you could do cone beam or 3D rotational angiography, which basically would give you a 3D image, like a CAT scan image, with the machine only spinning, I think, 270 degrees. The computer would fill in the rest. The recon time was 3 minutes. You don't think 3 minutes is a lot, but when you have a patient on the table and you have a catheter and you're worrying about an artery spasming or losing access or anything like that, and you're trying to have the patient hold still and not move, 3 minutes feels like an eternity.
Oh, yeah.
Now we do, prostate artery embolization. I could recall doing our first prostate artery embolization several years ago, and you're talking about 4-hour procedure. We're doing prostate artery embolizations in an hour, and a lot has to do with the equipment. We do have a protocol, a CT protocol, that when the patients are consulted, they get their CT. Those images can be brought up right on the monitor, but our recon time to do the same 3D rotational spin for a cone beam CT is under 30 seconds.
That's great.
So you think about, you're watching the clock and okay, where's the image? And, now it's like, I would imagine it's going to even get quicker.
Yeah. 3 minutes. I mean, for those who are listening who might not work in the field of radiology or anything time specific like that, 3 minutes is a long time. And I can attest to it just working in, just using a general C-arm within the operating room, and, something trips and your plug gets pulled out and you've got to reboot your machine and the doctor's standing there staring at you and you're like, I know it takes like 2 minutes and 30 seconds for this thing to kick back on. Yeah. And you're just standing there. So I mean, I totally understand what you're saying. 3 minutes doesn't seem long, but it definitely actually really is.
Yeah. I can remember going from 3 minutes down to 90 seconds. And, you were just like, oh my God, this is great. And like I said, now we're down to 30 seconds for complete spin and recon to actually be able to look at the imaging.
Where you currently are now, I mean, like AI is like all over the map. And I feel like, I've had a lot of different guests come on, talking about different technologies that are being developed. Are you guys using any of that within your suite that you're working in and in New York Imaging?
So we're not really using too much of it. Within the organization, there is some AI stuff out there. I was at a conference a couple of weeks ago and I was talking with our chief of radiology for our organization, and conversation came up and we were talking about it. Just some of the stuff out there. Obviously, there's fear, right? Everybody talks about, losing your job to computers. And he was saying, as good as it is, it's not there yet.
No, I definitely think that.
There's nothing, more complete than a set of eyes that are reading the films, reading the images and everything. Probably within the next 5 to 10 years, I could see that there's going to be some much more advancement in that.
Mm-hmm. I mean, I was discussing this with another guest recently, that it's just AI is, I feel like, really being just developed to help. It's an additional tool that you have right in your box. And you can use it if you want to, and you don't have to. And some are great to be used, in terms of radiologists who are sitting and reading studies, that it's great to use. And say if you're like on the fence about something and you might use it to scan it and it's confirming what you already believed, or might point out something that maybe
something totally different.
Right. Or then there's also too, there's great things that, kind of, for, again, just going with like the reading thing, that prioritize things on your list, So not so much using within IR, but, the radiologists who do work in IR, like I know the department that I work in, if they're not doing procedures, then they're sitting down, they're looking at CAT scans or looking at, other images and doing readings on them. So there's different AI tools out there that prioritize in your list of like, you should look at this one first and then, so on and so forth. Right. Different tools though. And I don't know if this would be considered AI, but Joe and I were talking about how I work in a hybrid OR using, for vascular procedures. And I think the technology that I use there, we have Siemens equipment. And I love that, like, we can do a run with contrast, and then, you paddle through the image, they pick the one that they want, and then we put it up. Siemens calls it an overlay. Some people call it, I think it's native or something. I'm not really sure, but it's like basically like a shadow on the screen. And it's helpful for the doctors. So it's like basically like they have a little tiny map there that they can use. Right. So they
all part of
runs,
all part of like the road mapping software that came out years ago, where with the split monitors, you could now take that image, put it on a native, remove some of the background, with some of the bony structures, and then basically repeat the same run and get your balloon or your catheter or your stent to the exact location.
Yeah.
And so your accuracy of dropping a stent or ballooning, a stricture is much more accurate.
Right. It saves on dose for patients, and then patients who, might have like kidney issues, like you're concerned about using contrast, using too much. You don't have to keep doing runs, you can, look at it and paddle through or pick the picture that you want. So, I mean, so much stuff. And I'm sure probably at the time when you first entered into IR, was anything like that even on the map or maybe possibly being used at your facility like that?
When I started, we were doing peripheral runoffs. You were doing table stepping. We were doing them with on film, plain film.
Okay.
14 by 17 cassettes. You loaded them in, and there were 5, cassettes underneath the patient, and the machine stepped to the next position, took the picture, and just kept going down. Then you'd go to the dark room, you process the film, you take it out, and now you're hanging on the view boxes, and the rad's looking at the legs in 5 different images from each segment, to now where you're right up on the entire thing is right up on your monitor.
Yeah.
I think we have like a 65-inch monitor on our built into the machine.
So speaking of something like that, where you're running individual cassettes, I'm in the era of, I learned about film screen in school. It was still part of my X-ray boards. And then, but, CR was on the scene. Digital was like DR was being talked about, but wasn't really prevalent at the time.
Yeah.
But I do remember my first hospital that I worked at, we were doing scoliosis. So a little bit different than a runoff, but you're still taking separate individual images, and you'd have to take 3 cassettes and you'd have to load them in, and then the image would process. But the software was there that it stitched it for you all together.
Yeah.
Was something like that developed for runoff images?
It was, yeah. It went from that to your DR acquisitions, where, again, now you didn't have to load anything. You just had to set the machine up, program it, step the table over each portion of the extremities, from the pelvis down to the feet. And then once you had, your 2 buttons, you one the injector, the power injector for your contrast, and then the other button was your table, and it would just step according.
Standing there like this.
Yeah, and hope you don't come off the button. And I'm sure anybody who's been in IR knows it's not a good thing when the doc looks over at you and you came off the button, and you stopped injecting or you stopped X-raying too early.
Yeah. Yeah. You're like, oh my God, I'm so sorry.
Yeah. Yep.
Are things like that, like, not things like that, but runoffs, you were talking about how like vascular doctors kind of, became more interventionalists and kind of started taking over different procedures. Do you still see procedures like that, like the runoffs and different angios being done as often in IR?
Not being in the last few years now. We were involved when I was in the hospital, when AAA stenting started becoming more and more mainstream. Again, we go back to, we worked side by side with the vascular surgeons. They would call us up. Hey, when we got a case, we would have a portable cart with all our balloons and stents and, devices and 18 gauge, 18 French sheets. And we would go up to the OR, and we would work in conjunction with them, accessing both femoral arteries, putting up wires, and doing those procedures. But in the last few years, I really haven't done any, there hasn't been much vascular work, peripheral. Our vascular is all embolization, so we do a lot of liver embolizations, like I said earlier, uterine fibroid embolizations, and our prostates.
Yeah. So many different, things changing in IR, but also too, lots of new technologies and processes being used in other parts of radiology. Are there any specific new things that you guys have that you're using at New York Imaging for, different screenings and such?
So we do have a very, very big lung cancer screening program. We have 10 accredited sites throughout New York that are dedicated to lung cancer screening. We also have one of our urology practices. They have a system, it's called Promaxo. It's one of the first in the region, and it's for MRI-guided prostate biopsies. They're able to perform them with, incredible accuracy, comfort to the patient, really precise diagnosis and treatment planning. And we're one of the first in the country to utilize this system. It's, very positive and exciting news for patients with prostate cancer.
To interrupt just for a second, I hate to say, like, feel kind of silly to even say this, that even though I've worked in radiology for like over 10 years, I never really, I guess, fully understood how let me try to think the right way to say, I don't want to say the importance, but MRI is, so much more like such a great tool that is used in terms of like cancer screenings.
Mhm.
And, I feel like for a while, like, think about it, like, oh, it's great for like spine work and things like that. And, the more I talk to guests on this podcast and we talk about, diagnoses of, different diseases or cancers, things like that, that MRI is just like, I feel like it's kind of like the one that's all the way up here. I mean, like, up here high wise, you know what I mean? Like, I was talking to a breast radiologist the other night, and she was saying that for patients who are coming through, that have family history and stuff, that she would like to start off with an MRI of the breast first, because it's actually one of the best screening tools, you
Mhm.
know better than doing the mammogram.
Yeah.
And and then how you're saying that you're using it for this procedure, it's interesting to me and good information to me. So I hope that everyone else that's listening kind of feels the same way. But continue. I'm sorry.
Yeah, no, that's just some of the things, like even with our procedures that we perform, we're performing a lot more procedures on the ultrasound guidance. The ultrasound
Yeah.
technology has gotten so much better than it was. Most of the liver, kidney biopsies, they're all done on we do them on the ultrasound guidance now. Aside from all of your regular vascular access cases and stuff like that, but that platform that we don't really even, like, always think about, imaging, but then we sometimes forget about ultrasound, the improvements that have been made in that technology and how that helps us. And again, that, it all trickles down to, the patient, and there's a decrease, there's, less dose, less radiation, less exposure, all the things that everybody's worried about. So it helps on that end as well. One of the other things is we do PET CT, and it's PSMA, which is prostate specific molecular type of imaging. It's we use a with the PET CT, we use it's called Clarify, which would be what you inject, and it's very specific for prostate cancer, primary tumors of prostate. It's more accurate than the traditional FDG, which is being used for prostate for PET-CTs.
I guess, does that, it like highlights the prostate differently than?
Yeah, so patients who are high risk, very have a high risk for prostate cancer. Sometimes when they do the scans, you may have something that comes up, hot spot, but it might not be the primary prostate. This actually looks for, like, on the molecular level, it looks for that specific prostate antigen and can find it in bone, where it's metastasized to other parts of the body.
Mhm.
It's a lot better than conventional, imaging that used to be done. So there's so much. We talk about technology. That's just some of the things that we're doing at New York Imaging for our patients.
Do you offer these? Well, you said that you do the lung screening at, did you say 10 different locations?
Yep.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I mean,
That's easy. You can go on the web. Patients can go on our website. You know, if they're not in treatment, they can go on the website and call and inquire about it. I don't have the specific sites that we do it at, but there's
yeah,
10 locations that we do it at.
right. Do you know what the screening involved? Is it like a chest X-ray accompanied by something else, or?
I'm not 100% sure. I got to be
Okay.
honest with you.
Okay.
It's a little bit out of my department, but the primary is the CT portion of it.
Oh, okay. Gotcha. And I'm sure, I mean, with everything health related, you have to have, I'm sure, possibly insurance clearance. So I wonder, not, I don't expect you to have this answer, but I'm just like spinning in my head. I'm like, you probably have to have some type of like, you're a current smoker or a history of smoking, or, I'm assuming something like that, for insurance to even possibly cover it.
Yeah.
Damn this insurance.
Yeah, I mean, we have a great department, the department that handles all of that, the screening and the insurance, really working with the patients. We have also, because we're part of New York Cancer and Blood Services, we have what's called the Cancer Foundation, and that is all done on donation. It's almost like an entire organization that's geared towards giving back to patients who can't afford things. We could provide medical Ubers to and from your procedure. We provide patients with grants for to pay for rent or utilities. A lot of it again comes from private donations. As employees, we all have an opportunity to help and give back, and a lot of us, do a payroll deduction that goes to the New York Cancer Foundation. I think this year I just was at a conference a couple of weeks ago. I think we raised just about around $1 million this past year for,
awesome.
Unfortunate or underprivileged, families that can't afford, some of the cancer treatments and stuff.
Honestly, I mean, you had mentioned the medical Ubers. I think that is one of the best ideas that's out there. And I applaud your company for doing that. My mom actually has used them in the past, not to get on a personal level, but on a personal level.
Mm-hmm.
And I mean, it's great for patients who, say if you're going to a lot of appointments, unfortunately, there's only so many people that you probably have in your wheelbarrow to take you to appointments. And if you're going here, there, and everywhere, and like a few times a week, it's difficult for patients to, get rides. Maybe they don't feel, maybe they can drive themselves, but maybe they just don't feel comfortable. Maybe they want the company, or, maybe they're going for a procedure and they're just so nervous and they don't want to drive. That I think that having the medical Ubers are great. And even if you have to possibly pay like $5 as opposed to like paying for like a whole Uber, which could possibly be like $40 to an.
And we have patients coming from all over the tri-state area.
Yeah.
So, they're coming from Brooklyn, Queens, Staten Island, Westchester, to any of our, facilities. And not everybody drives. Especially when you live in the city, people don't have cars. So this is just a great opportunity for them, to be able to get the care and the treatment that they need.
Guys, this is Joe with me tonight, talking about all things great at New York Imaging and, the wonderful world of being an RA out there. Joe, I really appreciate your time talking with me tonight and sharing, your journey up to where you are now.
Well, thank you, Jen. I appreciate you reaching out and contacting me and allowing me to be on the podcast.
Oh, my pleasure. All right, everybody. It's Jen Callahan and Joe Ferreri, a.k.a. Ferrari, as he told me. We'll see you next week.
Good night.
All right, guys, we're back. Joe and I were just talking, and we just realized that we didn't ask one of the most important questions, for the night for technologists that are out there, that if he had any advice, what would he give to current technologists or future technologists? So, Joe, go ahead. Tell me your advice.
My advice would be, do what you love and love what you do. And that drives your passion. You have to be doing something that you like to do and are passionate about it. And at the same time, you have to love what you're doing.
I couldn't put it any better. All right, guys, we'll see you later. You've been watching The Skeleton Crew, brought to you by xraytech.org. On the next episode, join us to explore the present and the future of the rad tech career in the field of radiology.